Greetings and shalom. This is the fourth in a six-part series of Un-Apologetics Lite, refuting Islamic apologist Nadir Ahmed and his claims of scientific error in the Holy Bible. Our previous episodes on this issue include the virginity test of Deuteronomy, the parable of the mustard seed, and the lack of a strict prohibition of alcohol in the Holy Bible. Today, we will be addressing Nadir Ahmed's claim that the Bible is in scientific error when it claims there was a worldwide flood, specifically because the amount of animals that would have to be on the ark. Before we get started, I would like to briefly point out that Nadir Ahmed has been dishonestly claiming that Christian apologists are running away from him on this issue. Namely, does the Holy Bible contain scientific errors? This despite the fact that he has had multiple debates with Christian apologists on this issue and has himself run away from other Christian apologists, myself included among their number, on this very issue. I want the record to show that Nadir Ahmed is lying when he says that we are unwilling to address this issue with him or any other issue with him, and that he himself has been the one who is pushing these things off. Nonetheless, we continue. We see here from the Google Doc that has been floating around in Nadir Ahmed's name, Quran corrects worldwide flood account of the Holy Bible. Let's read what it has to say and see if there's anything of value within its pages. In the biblical account of Noah, it teaches that the whole world was flooded. Science disproves the world was flooded. Quoting John Hollier, he is an English entomologist and ecologist. He has lived in Switzerland for the last 10 years and currently works at the Geneva Natural History Museum. So far, some 1 million species of insect have been discovered. Did Noah collect specimens all around the world? Given the havoc that introduced species cause in today's ecosystems, the latter seems more plausible, albeit improbable. Then there is the question of releasing them again. Estimates say that 86% of all land species have not been discovered. Therefore, it is preposterous to think all these millions of species were loaded on one ark. Islam corrects biblical scientific errors by stating the flood was only local to the people of Noah. Surah 25:37, and the people of Noah, when they denied the messengers, we drowned them, and we made them for mankind a sign, and we have prepared for the wrongdoers a painful punishment. This is a clear and deliberate alteration to the famous biblical account of Noah's flood by the Quran. Now, there are actually two things that need to be addressed here. Claim number one, that there would be millions of species on the ark, and therefore this is a scientific error. Claim number two, that the Quran corrects this scientific error by claiming this was a local flood. The first issue Nadir Ahmed has, as Nadir Ahmed seems to always have, and as all Islamic apologists seem to always have, is of course the Islamic dilemma. Surah 7:157 says clearly, those who follow the messenger, the unlettered prophet, whom they find written in what they have of the Torah and the gospel, who enjoins upon them what is right and forbids them what is wrong, and makes lawful for them the good things and prohibits for them the evil, so on and so forth. Why is this important? Because you can't have a prophecy from God in the gospel and the Torah unless the gospel and the Torah are from God. It gets more clear as it pertains to the Torah in Surah 5:43, which says, but how is it that they, the Jews, come to you for judgment, you being Muhammad, while they have the Torah, in which is the judgment of Allah? Notice that contained in the Torah is the judgment of Allah. So, Nadir Ahmed, if he is going to attack stories from the Torah, which the Noah flood account certainly is, it's found in Genesis, one of the 5 books of the Torah, he is going to be attacking Islam as well. This, of course, gets worse when one actually examines what the Quran has to say about Noah. In Surah 71, or Surah Nu, because it is the Surah of Noah, we see here in the very first verse, indeed we sent Noah to his people, right? we see a couple of things. One thing that is interesting and simply ironic to point out is Surah 71, verse 15, which says, "Do you not consider how Allah has created 7 heavens in layers?" I find it interesting that we are here discussing scientific errors, and in fact, if you go to the very surah about Noah, which bears his name, you will find very obvious and unambiguous scientific errors. But nonetheless, we are going to go ahead and continue. There's a very interesting verse, or ayat as they are called in Islam, in Surah 71, and that is verse 26. Surah 71:26 says, "And Noah said, My Lord, do not leave upon the earth from among the disbelievers an inhabitant. Indeed, if you leave them, they will mislead your servants and not beget except every wicked one and confirmed disbeliever." Notice that Noah says in the surah that bears his name, "Do not leave upon the earth," not upon my local area, "from among the disbelievers an inhabitant." This seems pretty unambiguously to be a command or a request for no disbelievers on the entire face of the earth. However, it actually gets much more clear in Surah 11. What exactly was the problem which Nadir Ahmed had with the biblical account? His problem was the number of animals that would be on the ark. But in Surah 11, ayat 40, we see, "So it was until when our command came and the oven overflowed. We said, Load upon the ship of each creature 2 mates and your family." Notice, Noah is to load upon the boat or ship 2 of each creature, precisely as is said in Genesis. So if there is a scientific error in the Genesis account, because 2 of every creature in a global flood happen, 2 of every creature go on the ark rather, and a global flood happen, then there is a scientific error in the Quran as well for the exact same reasons. But of course, just because Islam comes up floundering in this particular issue doesn't necessarily mean we have escaped the problem. Is there indeed a scientific error in fitting that many animals onto an ark? Now, there are actually very good scientific evidences that suggest there has in fact been a global flood. I will provide links to those in the description below, but we will not be addressing them today simply because Nadir Ahmed has only provided us the one reason to believe this is a scientific error. However, if we go to gotquestions.com, a biblical answers website, we will read the following. The dimensions for the ark given in Genesis are 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Genesis 6:15. What is a cubit? A cubit is an ancient unit of measurement, the length of the forearm from the elbow to the longest finger. The term cubit comes from the Latin word cubitum, which means elbow. The Hebrew word for cubit is amma. As everybody's arms are different lengths, this unit may seem a bit ambiguous to some, but scholars generally agree that it represents somewhere between 17 and 22 inches, or 43 and 56 centimeters. The ancient Egyptian cubit is known to have been 21.888 inches, so doing the math, 300 times 22 inches equals 6,600, 50 times 22 inches equals 1,100, 30 times 22 inches equals 660. 6,600 divided by 12 is 550 feet. 1,100 divided by 12 is 91.7 feet. 660 divided by 12 equals 55 feet. Thus, the ark would have been up to 550 feet long, 91.7 feet wide, and 55 feet high. These are not unreasonable dimensions. But how much storage space does this amount to? Well, 550 times 91.7 times 55 equals 2,773,9 925 cubic feet. If we take the smallest measurements of cubit, 17 inches, we end up with 1,278,825 cubic feet. Of course, not all of it would have to be free space. The ark has 3 levels, according to Genesis 6:16, and a lot of rooms, according to Genesis 6:14, the walls of which would have taken up space. Nevertheless, it has been calculated that a little more than half, 54.75%, of the 2,773,925 cubic feet could store 125,000 sheep-sized animals, leaving over 1.5 million cubic feet of free space. John Woodmorapp, author of the definitive Noah's Ark: A Feasibility Study, estimated that only 15% of the animals on the ark would have been larger than a sheep. This figure does not take into account the possibility that God may have brought Noah infant animals, which can be significantly smaller than adults. How many animals would be on the ark? Woodmorapp estimates 8,000 kinds. What is a kind? The designation of kind is thought to be much broader than the designation species, even as there are over 400 dog breeds belonging to one species, Canis familiaris, so many species can belong to one kind. Some think that the designation genus may be somewhat close to the biblical kind. Nevertheless, even if we presume the kind is synonymous with species, there are not very many species of mammals, birds, amphibians, and reptiles. The leading systematic biologist, Ernest Mayr, gives the number as 17,600, allowing for 2 of each species on the ark, plus 7 of the few so-called clean kinds of animals, plus a reasonable increment of known extinct species. It is obvious that not more than, say, 50,000 animals would have to be on this ark. So, if we look at the evidence, we see not only does the Quran affirm the Torah and the Gospel, and not only does the Quran affirm the exact same story of a global flood and 2 of every animal on the ark, but in fact, the number is not millions of animals on the ark, but roughly 50,000, on an ark that could easily store 125,000. And this is something that is very easily deduced by simple mathematics. Next time, we will be addressing the ridiculous claim that allowing divorce only in the case of adultery is somehow a scientific error. Shalom.